The stars were as silent as ever, but something had changed. Beyond the outer rim of the Erixus system, the Zalvari warfleet loomed like a steel storm. Hundreds of warships, sleek and vast, floated with arrogant calm. Their hulls shimmered with particle shielding, their weapon bays always primed. For nearly a century, the Zalvari ruled with one philosophy: destroy first, ask never. They weren't feared because they were powerful. They were feared because they believed no one could ever touch them. Their empire stretched across galaxies, built from ash and submission. Dozens of alien races had tried to fight. Every single one was gone, erased. The Zalvari didn't occupy. They obliterated. They didn't negotiate. They demanded silence. But on that day, a single human ship appeared. Just one. Small, dull, drifting. The bridge crew aboard the flagship Unyielding Flame stared at the blip in confused silence. It wasn't broadcasting any signal, had no fleet signature, and was cold, powerless. Captain Tirlak clicked his claws against his armored chest plate. His voice rasped like gravel. "Is that a human ship?" "Yes, Captain," came the response from his sensor officer. "Old model, Federation era. No heat, no movement. It appears derelict." Tirlak sneered. "Even their corpses are pathetic. Board it, strip it, bring back the bones if there are any." The Zalvari were used to this. Weak resistance. Dead things. What they didn't know was that inside the dead vessel, Dane Thorne was already waiting for them. Every breath Dane took was slow, measured. He crouched in the shadows of his ship, the Revenant, eyes fixed on the interface feeding him readings through a helmet visor. The Zalvari dropships were docking. He listened as their heavy boots echoed through the empty corridors. They wouldn't be cautious. They never were. That's what made them predictable. That's what made them vulnerable. 3 years ago, Dane's brother died screaming over a comm line. He was on the Helios Dawn, Earth's first colonization vessel. The Zalvari intercepted it halfway to Proxima and turned it into molten scrap. They didn't issue a warning. They just annihilated it. Dane had been on Mars when he heard the transmission. Cut off mid-sentence, his brother's last words choked by fire. After that, Earth tried to beg, tried to reason, tried to survive. The Zalvari responded by turning Mars' orbital defense stations into stardust. Humanity didn't go extinct. They disappeared, on purpose. They went dark, shut off satellites, scrubbed their presence from every network. While the galaxy forgot them, they built in silence. And now, Dane Thorne was humanity's first answer to the massacre. He wasn't a soldier anymore. Not officially. He was something worse. A ghost with a pulse. The Zalvari split into 2 squads, stomping through the Revenant's corridors, claws out, weapons glowing. One of them laughed in their guttural language, dragging his blade along the walls. Dane waited. The first alien stepped past the pressure lock, and never made it 2 feet. Dane's bullet caught him clean in the skull. The second turned in confusion just in time to see his own blood spray across the wall. Dane moved fast, efficient, deadly. He had no backup, no AI assistance, just a neural-linked rifle, homemade armor, and hate sharpened by 3 years of silence. 4 Zalvari down, then 6, then all 12. They never stood a chance. By the time the Revenant reactivated, Dane was already at the helm. The ship's engines came to life with a low, guttural hum. On the Zalvari flagship, Tirlak stared at his screens. No signal from the boarding team, no vitals. Then a transmission crackled to life. A human voice. Calm. Cold. "You should have stayed away from Earth." Tirlak's eyes widened. "Fire! Destroy it now!" But the Revenant had already plunged into motion, weaving through the chaos with impossible precision. Its systems were invisible to scanners, and its speed was wrong. Too fast for its size, too smooth. Tirlak watched as one of his cruisers suddenly exploded from within. Then another. Then a third. Sabotage? Dane had hacked their security protocols, knew their fleet language. Earth had spent years studying their weaknesses while pretending to be dead. What was happening now wasn't a skirmish. It was a reckoning, and Dane Thorne was the messenger. The Revenant pulsed forward like a predator cutting through a herd. Zalvari ships moved in mechanical patterns, perfect, predictable, and that's what made them vulnerable. Dane sat hunched at the command module, eyes locked on the fleet layout. His fingers danced across the controls, manually rerouting power to auxiliary thrusters. No autopilot, no onboard AI. He didn't trust anything he hadn't built himself. Zalvari viruses had corrupted human defense systems before. Earth learned that lesson too late. He slid a targeting overlay onto the display, 3 nearby cruisers forming a shield perimeter. Each had weak points, venting shafts, hyperdrive coils, undercarriage stabilizers. Dane had memorized every detail. During Earth's silence, Dane wasn't hiding. He was infiltrating, stealing data, mapping, planning. His right hand hovered over the fire controls, but he didn't fire. Not yet. Instead, he pressed a thin silver switch beside his seat. A second later, the Revenant ejected 3 pods, barely larger than briefcases, each aimed at one of the cruisers. "Hello, boys," Dane muttered. Inside each pod was a nanite dispersal charge, specifically designed to chew through the Zalvari's quantum shielding and fry the internal navigation systems. They'd been tested once, on a dead Zalvari husk orbiting Neptune. It took the ship 5 minutes to tear itself apart. Dane sat back, waiting. At first, the cruisers remained motionless. Then, one by one, their course trajectories stuttered. Glitches flared across their plasma drives. Sparks shot from their antenna arrays. Moments later, the first ship listed sideways, then split clean in half. The second exploded from within, its reactor cooked alive. The third went dark. 3 down, Dane said flatly. 200 to go. He knew it wasn't a war he could win ship for ship. Not alone. This wasn't a war at all. It was a warning. He keyed in a new trajectory and slipped deeper into the fleet's underbelly, ducking between sensor arrays and floating wreckage. Tirlak's fleet had positioned itself for intimidation, not defense. They weren't expecting an enemy to hunt them. Inside the unyielding flame, Tirlak was no longer sneering. His claws clicked faster, his black tongue flicking in agitation. He barked orders to his crew, commanding scans, recalibrations, blind firing. Nothing helped. The Revenant was a ghost. Too quiet. Too fast. Tirlak slammed his fist into the control panel. "What kind of ship is that?" No one answered. They didn't know. But Dane knew what it was. It was Earth's guilt, forged into steel. As the Revenant slipped through the chaos, Dane allowed himself a moment, just one, to look at the photo clipped beside his console. A boy. Brown-haired, smiling wide, missing one front tooth, holding a model spaceship in his hands. His little brother, Liam. Dane closed his eyes. He could still hear the last message. "Big bro, tell Mom we saw the ice rings. They're huge. Feels like flying through a rainbow. We're gonna start orbit burn in like... Wait, what's that?" Then static. They never even made it to Proxima. Zalvari ships tore through the civilian vessel like it was a toy. No one on board was armed. There were children, scientists, grandparents. They didn't care. Afterward, when Dane tried to call for retaliation, the Federation silenced him, claimed they couldn't afford another war, that Earth would lose, that survival meant hiding. But hiding wasn't survival. It was surrender. So Dane vanished. Took what savings he had, moved off-grid, and built the Revenant from scraps, favors, and stolen tech. Everything they said humanity couldn't do anymore, he did. And now he was going to make the Zalvari remember why humans were never meant to be underestimated. "Multiple cruisers offline, Commander," said the Zalvari weapons officer. "We're detecting internal sabotage." Tirlak snarled. "Find him, now." "He's jamming every spectrum. We don't even know which direction he came from." Tirlak's voice dropped low. "Dangerous. Then stop thinking like warriors and start thinking like prey, because he's hunting us. You understand?" The crew stiffened. Fear hadn't touched them in decades. Now it was crawling up their spines. Dane's voice crackled over the fleet-wide comms. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He just spoke. "This is Dane Thorne. You remember Earth, the planet you burned? I'm what's left, and I'm not here to negotiate." The message looped once, then cut. Silence fell across the fleet. On board a smaller patrol frigate, Svarkon, a young Zalvari officer stared at the screen, hands trembling. His voice was quiet. "He's one human?" His commander didn't answer. The Revenant dove straight into the Scourge's path, dodging plasma bursts and magnetic spikes. Dane spun the ship under the creature's arm and brought it face to face with its twisted helm. The thing turned to him, slowly, like it recognized him. A voice echoed through the Revenant's comm, but it wasn't Zalvari. It was human, garbled, distorted, pained. His heart froze. The voice was Liam's. He staggered back from the console, eyes wide. "No." The voice came again, clearer this time, warped, stretched with rage and grief. Vera stared in horror. "They used his mind!" The Scourge lashed out, and the Revenant took a direct hit, spinning into a debris field. Dane righted the ship just in time to avoid another strike. "He's alive in there," Dane said, chest heaving. "They didn't just clone him. They trapped him." "And now he's their weapon," Vera whispered. "Dane, you might have to kill him." "No," Dane snapped. "I'm not leaving him like this." The plan was insane, even by Dane's standards. Get close, board the Scourge, find what remained of Liam inside and shut down the hybrid core manually. "Alone?" Briggs asked. Dane nodded. "It has to be me. If there's anything left of him, he'll listen to me." Vera pulled him aside before the mission. "You could die in there." "I should have died 100 times already." Her voice broke. "That doesn't mean I want to lose you now." He looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, his expression softened. "I have to try." Then he turned and walked toward his fate. The Revenant launched a boarding torpedo straight into the Scourge's chest plate. The explosive casing broke open, and Dane burst out into chaos. Inside was a world of nightmares, twisting black corridors pulsing with bioenergy, filled with echoes of screaming voices. The structure wasn't built like a ship. It was like walking through a heart, a corrupted one. He fought through half-formed drones, automated defense limbs, and psychic dissonance that nearly cracked his skull. All around him, the ship spoke. "Dane, Dane, why didn't you save us?" He followed the core pulses deeper, guided by Liam's faint mental echo. Finally he reached it, a chamber of light and pain. Suspended in a cocoon of wires and bone was what remained of his brother, a barely human figure, face twisted in agony, body covered in Zalvari tech. "Liam," Dane stepped forward. The thing's eyes snapped open. "Dane!" He dropped his weapon. "I'm here. I found you." Liam's voice was shattered glass. "It hurts. I couldn't stop them." "You don't have to. I'm getting you out." But as Dane approached, Liam's body twitched violently. A surge of energy burst from his chest. "I'm not alone," he rasped. "They're inside me. Dane's wrist console beeped. The singularity core was overloading. "They're forcing me to blow this whole system," Liam groaned. "Kill you, kill the fleet, I can't stop it." Dane grabbed his brother's shoulders. "Yes, you can. I'm not strong enough. You're my brother. You're the strongest person I ever knew." A pause. Then Liam nodded. "Then let's end it." Together they reached for the core stabilizer. Dane rerouted the energy into a feedback loop. Liam, screaming in pain, directed his own neural link against the Zalvari programming. Outside, the scourge began to tremble. Inside, Dane held his brother tight. "Thank you," Liam whispered, "for remembering me." Then the core exploded in white light. The scourge imploded, collapsing into a dense sphere before disappearing entirely in a final pulse of gravity. The shockwave rippled across the fleet, but the Revenant survived, barely, dragged back by emergency tethers. No one saw Dane for 2 days. When the medbay doors opened again, he walked out alone. Liam was gone, but not forgotten. Weeks later, the high caste of the Zalvari fell silent. Their fleets began retreating. Worlds once enslaved declared independence, and the galaxy breathed again. Dane stood at a makeshift memorial on a liberated colony, surrounded by names of the dead etched in steel. Liam's name glowed at the top. Vera approached quietly. "They want you to speak." "To say what?" "You ended it." He shook his head. "Number I just gave it a chance to end." She smiled. "That's enough." Dane stepped onto the platform and looked at the crowd. Thousands stood watching. Survivors, soldiers, children born in war. He didn't speak loudly, just clearly. "I'm not a hero," he said. "I'm just a man who got tired of watching good people die." He looked up at the stars. "But if I've proven anything, it's that humans don't stay dead. We don't stay quiet, and we don't kneel." He placed his hand over Liam's name. "Let them remember what happens when they try to erase us." The crowd roared. And somewhere in the stars, Dane Thorne knew. Earth lived again, and it remembered everything. He fired a hull-piercing torpedo at the reactor exhaust port. Not the main core, that was too well protected. He was aiming at the stabilizer feed that balanced internal pressure. The torpedo struck with a dull thud and vanished inside. 3 seconds later, a microburst flared through the flagship's underbelly. The stabilizer screamed. Dane had just disabled one of the 3 coolant loops running through the power core. Now the whole ship would overheat by 20% every 10 minutes. He wasn't trying to destroy it outright. He was cooking it from the inside. Inside the unyielding flame, alarms shrieked. Zalvari engineers screamed orders, scrambling to reroute heat across backup systems. Tirlak stormed into the core chamber, his black cloak trailing smoke from a recent short circuit. "Where is he?" One of the engineers looked up in panic. "He's underneath. We can't get a firing angle. He's using the wreckage as cover." "Then ram it!" Tirlak bellowed. "Crush him!" The helmsman hesitated. "Sir, if we move, the heat will spike beyond threshold. The stabilizers—" Tirlak grabbed the helmsman by the throat and slammed him against the console. "Do it!" The ship groaned as its massive thrusters engaged. From his cockpit, Dane watched the flagship begin to drift. The sudden heat bloom was visible in the spectrum scanners. That meant they were reacting, panicking. But moving the ship was exactly what Dane wanted. He engaged the magnetic clamps on the bottom of the Revenant and latched onto the flagship, an old Earth pirate trick. He turned off his main engines and let the giant warship carry him, invisible to sensors and hidden in their blind spot. "Now take me home," Dane muttered with a grin. From here, he had direct access to their maintenance frequency, a low-level signal used for internal diagnostics. He tapped in a dirty bypass code. something he'd stolen during a Federation black site raid 2 years ago. To his surprise, the code still worked. Lazy bastards never updated their encryption. He scrolled through system logs, pulling reactor data, internal camera feeds, shield diagnostics. The flagship was overheating fast. Fires had started in one wing. Automated containment failed. That meant one thing. The core was exposed. He just needed a way inside. That's when he saw it. A docking bay on the underside had been damaged during the earlier battle. Its exterior doors stuck partially open. The interior shields were flickering, unsecured. He had a shot. Dane disengaged from the hull and drifted closer, using the side thrusters to slip into the breach. The Revenant groaned from the pressure changes, but the ship held together. The moment he cleared the threshold, he engaged internal dampeners and landed inside the bay with a soft metallic clunk. He was inside the Zalvari flagship, alone, outnumbered, exactly where he wanted to be. Dane stepped out in full armor, sleek, matte black, reinforced with lightweight alloy stolen from a Zalvari research lab. His helmet locked tight, HUD syncing with the Revenant's sensors. He wasn't just walking in to destroy the ship. He was here to kill Tirlak, the monster responsible for his brother's death. The docking bay was empty, half-burned, partially collapsed. He moved fast, keeping to shadows, pulse rifle up, scanning every hallway. Zalvari guards were already rushing to containment breaches elsewhere, leaving the southern maintenance wing mostly unguarded. He moved like smoke, slipping through corridors, placing silent charges along conduits as he passed. Dane didn't have a full strike team, but he had rage and a plan. Tirlak's command chamber sat at the center of the upper deck, surrounded by 2 shield walls and elite guards. Dane needed to breach both without drawing the full brunt of the fleet's security, which is why he'd planted the charges. Back at his wrist console, he tapped a command. "Detonate South Wing Cooling Core?" "Yes." The ship rocked violently as an internal explosion tore through the secondary coolant system. Flames belched out of the corridor vents. Emergency doors slammed shut. Sirens howled across the entire level, just like he'd planned. With systems going into lockdown mode, most automated defenses rerouted their attention to the fire zones. Dane used the chaos to sprint through the now unsecured corridor that led directly to the command deck. 2 guards spotted him mid-run. He shot both in the throat before they could raise an alarm. The door ahead blinked red. Bio-locked. Dane slammed a charge onto it and ducked left. The explosion sent the door flying backward in a cloud of smoke. Inside, Tirlak stood from his throne, surrounded by 3 armored guards. His skin glistened in the emergency lighting, and for the first time in his long rule, his expression wasn't amused. It was wary. "Human," he hissed, raising a glowing spear. "You dare step foot on my ship?" Dane said nothing. He raised his rifle and fired. The blast took 1 guard in the face. Another dove at him and caught a knife to the gut. Tirlak rushed forward, swinging the spear. Dane ducked low, rolled, and came up firing. Sparks flew as the spear glanced off his chest plate, knocking the wind out of him. He stumbled, but kept his aim steady. 2 shots. One hit Tirlak's leg. The other struck his shoulder. The Zalvari leader roared, swinging again, but Dane dropped under it and slammed his boot into the alien's chest, knocking him backward into his throne. Dane leveled the rifle, breathing hard. "This is for Liam Thorne," he said. He pulled the trigger. The shot tore through Tirlak's skull, leaving nothing behind but charred flesh and silence. Dane stood still for a moment, heart pounding. Then he keyed his wrist comm. "Revenant, detonate internal charges on exit route. We're done here." The ship shuddered again as he retraced his path, smoke and fire chasing him down collapsing corridors. By the time he reached the docking bay, the Revenant had already activated emergency lift protocols. He jumped in. The ship pulled away as the flagship's core began to overload. From space, it looked like the sun cracked. The unyielding flame split open, its reactors tearing through the spine of the mighty vessel. A shockwave blasted outward, sending debris across the fleet. The Zalvari had just lost their throne, and they'd lost it to one human. As Dane drifted away into the stars, the transmission looped again. Stronger this time, broader. Earth lives, and we remember everything. And across the galaxy, people started to listen. The wreckage of the unyielding flame drifted in cold silence, its fractured remains spinning in slow, mournful arcs. Light from the nearby star caught the metal edges and glinted off twisted beams, like the flash of a closing casket. Dane Thorne watched it all from the Revenant's cockpit, face unreadable beneath his helmet. He sat in stillness, breathing steady, the adrenaline slowly draining from his muscles. The ship was dark inside, emergency lighting only, the hum of backup systems the only sound. One man, one ship, and a fleet was in shambles. He should have felt satisfied, victorious, maybe even relieved. But all he felt was tired, because this wasn't the end. The death of Tirolac was only the beginning. The Empire didn't die with its tyrant. It just got angry. Elsewhere in the galaxy, the message had reached ears it wasn't supposed to. The encrypted signal Dane had broadcast from the Revenant had bounced through dozens of relay nodes, black market satellites, and dead Federation comm buoys. It spread like a virus, like a spark in a powder room. Old enemies of the Zalvari, who had long accepted their place in the dark, were waking up. On the jungle moon of Yaris 5, the last remnants of the Varn collective heard the transmission and stood in silence around their dying flame. Their leader, a scarred female named Kalra, played the human's message twice, then turned to her people. If Earth breathes, then so do we. On a mining asteroid once used as a slave pit, the chain gangs of the Krees broke formation and started whispering among themselves. On a rusting freighter in deep neutral space, a hidden Federation exile named Captain Mayer cracked a grin as she listened to the transmission. So the ghosts of Earth are back, huh? One message. That's all it took. Dane didn't just kill a warlord, he cracked the illusion of Zalvari immortality, and in doing so, he lit the galaxy on fire. Back inside the Revenant, Dane leaned back and stared at a blinking light on his console. An incoming transmission. Not Zalvari, not human either. Unknown. He paused for a moment, then accepted. The screen flickered, and a weathered face appeared. Dark-skinned, wrinkled, with one milky white eye and tribal scars down his jaw. A Drenari. A species the Zalvari had enslaved 3 decades ago. The man looked at Dane in silence, then gave a slight nod. Human. Name's Dane Thorne. I know. The whole sector knows now. The Drenari smiled grimly. You have no idea what you've done. Dane said nothing. The man continued. They'll come for you. Not just soldiers. Everything. The ruling caste will unleash the Maulers, the Collectors, assassins with starfire in their veins. You killed one of their gods, Dane. Dane leaned in. Then let them come. The Drenari chuckled. Spoken like a true Terran. He paused, voice lowering. You should know, you're not alone. We've been watching, waiting, hiding. You want to fight? The man's face hardened. We want to win. Then the transmission cut. Dane sat there, staring at the screen. A resistance, a spark of rebellion was growing, and now he was part of it, whether he wanted to be or not. The Revenant limped through debris, systems strained from the damage it took during the fight. Dane pulled open the maintenance panel beside his chair, reaching into the mess of wires and tools. Sparks shot out as he rerouted power. He'd been working without rest for 20 hours, still hadn't taken off his armor. He couldn't. Sleep was dangerous now. There was no one to take the watch. He worked in silence until a warning light flashed across the HUD, tracking signal detected. Dane's jaw clenched. They found him. A proximity alert followed. 3 Zalvari interceptors, cutting through the field fast and tight. Sleek, black, triangular ships with pulse cannons and rift torpedoes. They weren't sending a fleet this time. They were sending hunters. Dane punched the thrusters and veered hard left, skimming the edge of a spinning dreadnought corpse. Lasers sliced past his hull, close enough to rattle bolts loose. He returned fire, aiming not at the ships, but at the debris around them. One shot shattered a piece of an old engine core, sending a shockwave of shrapnel through the path of the closest interceptor. Its shields flared, but the pilot overcorrected and slammed into a drifting panel. One down. The other 2 adjusted, forming a cross pattern. Dane ducked down low behind the wreck of a cruiser. As they moved to flank, he triggered his rear mines. Old-style Earth fragmentation pods. Cheap but brutal. One of the interceptors was caught in the burst. It didn't explode. It simply vanished. Just one left now. The last Zalvari pilot was good. Better than the rest. It twisted, arced, dove under Dane's fire, then shot past the Revenant, scoring a direct hit to the aft engine. The ship bucked and spun out, smoke pouring from the rear. Dane gritted his teeth, steadying the spin. He rerouted power to side thrusters and slid the Revenant under a crumbling hull. The Zalvari gave chase. He counted seconds, waited, then cut his engines entirely. The Revenant dropped like a stone, drifting cold, dead again, just like before. The hunter overshot, scanning frantically, and Dane fired straight up through the ventral plating of the wreckage. One clean shot. The interceptor exploded in a silent ball of white flame. Dane exhaled hard. His ship was damaged, fuel low, hull scorched. But he was alive. For now. As he drifted into deeper space, away from the battlefield, Dane finally allowed himself a moment. He turned off the alarms, shut down his console, slid out of the chair and into the small quarters at the rear of the ship. The moment he took off his helmet, he looked 10 years older. Exhausted, hunted, hollowed. But his eyes, those steel blue eyes, still burned. He sat at the edge of the bunk and pulled out the data chip from his armor pouch. The same chip that carried every message, every name, every casualty Earth recorded during the Zalvari genocide. He plugged it into a small terminal. The screen lit up with names. Thousands of them. His brother, his brother's wife, their kids, friends, soldiers, scientists, children, all gone. And now, Dane carried all of them with him. The terminal blinked. A new update. The Drenari had sent a packet. Encrypted coordinates, safe harbors, contacts, frequencies for other groups scattered across sectors. All of them ready to rise. Waiting for a leader, a symbol. Dane wasn't sure he was that, but maybe, just maybe, he could be enough. He stood, slid the chip back into his armor, and returned to the bridge. The Revenant sputtered back to life, its panels cracked but still functioning. As the ship turned toward the edge of the system, Dane whispered quietly to the stars. "You started this," he said. "Now I finish it." He opened a channel to the encrypted resistance frequency. "This is Dane Thorne, broadcasting from Sector H-17. Tirlak is dead. The unyielding flame is dust. If you're listening, you are not alone. Earth remembers, and we are not done." He closed the channel and punched in the jump coordinates. The Revenant's engines flared, and it vanished into hyperspace. The galaxy wasn't ready, but it was about to learn. You don't erase humanity. not without bleeding for it. The Revenant dropped out of hyperspace with a hard jolt, its hull groaning from the strain. Dane tightened his grip on the console as alarms blared. Another coolant line had cracked mid-jump, leaving a thin mist of vapor hissing near the rear panel. He sighed. Gotta fix that before I cook alive in here. Outside the cockpit, a red dwarf sun cast dim light over a jagged asteroid belt. Among the tumbling rocks, camouflaged inside a crevice, waited an ancient mining station, long abandoned by the Federation after the collapse of the outer colonies. At least that's what the registry said. But Dane knew better, because a few clicks away from that drifting ruin was something more. Life signs, power surges, internal movement. He'd made contact with the Resistance. And now, for the first time in 3 years, Dane Thorne wasn't alone. As the Revenant approached, a hail came through. Encrypted. Tight beam. A gravelly voice crackled over the speakers. Unidentified vessel, hold position. Transmit clearance code or be fired upon. Dane keyed in the Drenari code packet he'd received. Silence. Then the voice returned, this time cautious. Revenant, proceed to docking bay 3. Do not power weapons. We'll be watching. Wouldn't expect anything less, Dane muttered. He maneuvered carefully into the docking ring, clamps latching with a heavy clang. As the airlocks cycled, Dane stood by the loading ramp, rifle on his back, pistol holstered, helmet under one arm. He didn't know who was on the other side of the door. Allies, maybe. But in this galaxy, ally was a word as unstable as plasma. When the ramp dropped, the first thing Dane saw was the barrel of a gun, pointed right at his face. Then came the voice behind it. Female. Sharp. Hands where I can see them, Terran. Dane raised his hands slowly. Easy. Not here to pick a fight. You picked one the moment you lit up Tyrlak's ship like a bonfire. She stepped into the light. Tall, dark-skinned, a jagged scar running from her cheek to her collarbone. Her gear was cobbled together from half a dozen species armors, worn like war trophies. And you are? Dane asked calmly. Captain Vera Mayer, you're Dane Thorne. It wasn't a question. Guilty. She studied him for a beat, then lowered the weapon. The others behind her, 3 of them, armed and armored, reluctantly followed her lead. You've stirred up a lot of ghosts, Thorne. Some of them ain't friendly. Ghosts are all I've got left. Vera smirked slightly, then turned. Come on, the Council wants to meet you. The Council turned out to be 6 beings seated around a circular chamber in what used to be a cargo hold. Each one represented a surviving faction. Small, splintered, but determined. A Drenari war monk. A Luthari tactician with cybernetic eyes. A grizzled human colonel named Briggs, who had once commanded Earth's last surface resistance unit before the Zalvari burned South America. And Vera, standing at the head of the circle, arms crossed. Briggs spoke first. You really took down the unyielding flame? Dane nodded. And Tyrlak. The room fell quiet. The Luthari muttered, They'll answer with blood. You've shattered their illusion of supremacy. I didn't come here for applause, Dane said. I came here to make sure this wasn't just a one-time miracle. I need to know if you're really ready to fight. Briggs leaned forward. Boy, we've been waiting for someone to throw the first punch. But make no mistake, we're not organized. We're hunted. Half our networks are dead or scattered. That's changing, Vera added. The message you sent? It's shaking stars loose. Pirate groups, forgotten militias, even old Federation ghosts are crawling out. But if we're going to do something real, we need to unify. Dane sat back. I didn't come to lead. I came to burn the bastards to the ground. Vera smirked. Well, congratulations. You just volunteered to lead. Later, alone in a makeshift bunk room patched together with salvaged metals, Dane stared at an old data pad. It was the same one Liam had mailed him before the Helios Dawn launch. Inside was a series of dumb videos, Liam in zero-G, flipping, laughing, playing with his kids, talking about a future that no longer existed. They'd dreamed of a better galaxy. Now Dane was covered in ash, trying to bring that dream back with bullets. The door hissed open. Vera stepped in quietly. "Didn't mean to interrupt," she said, "but you should see this." She tossed him a small hollow disk. Dane activated it, and the room filled with a three-dimensional image of a star system. "Riven's Hollow," she explained. "A secret shipyard. Used to be Federation. Then taken by the Zalvari and repurposed to build dreadnought hulls. Rumor says they're constructing a new flagship there, bigger than Tirlax." Dane narrowed his eyes. "How long until it's operational?" "Less than a week." He stood slowly. "Then we hit it." Vera raised an eyebrow. "You're serious?" "They didn't wait for us to be ready when they attacked. Why should we give them that courtesy?" Vera's smirk faded. "It's suicide. They'll expect us now. Reinforcements, war fleets, hell, even the collectors might be mobilized. Then we hit before they finish gearing up. No warning, no mercy." She studied him for a long moment. "You're not like the others." "I'm not trying to be." The next 2 days moved like war thunder. Dane worked alongside resistance mechanics, helping to repair the Revenant, while Vera coordinated scattered units through encrypted relays. Every tiny outpost, pirate crew, and planetary cell willing to fight was summoned to a remote rendezvous point beyond the reach of Zalvari patrols. They gathered silently, ships patched together with whatever parts were left from a dying galaxy. A fleet not made of power, but of rage. When Dane finally stood before them, broadcasting his image ship to ship, he kept his words short. "You know my name. You know what I did. I'm not a general. I'm not a diplomat. I'm just a man who got tired of watching us die quietly." He paused, eyes sweeping the fleet. "We're going to hit their shipyard. Riven's Hollow. We're going to show them the price of what they did to us. And if we die, then at least we make them bleed for every damn inch of it." Silence followed. Then one voice answered. Then another. Then hundreds. Weapons primed, drives warmed. The galaxy didn't have an army. But now, it had a cause. As the fleet jumped into hyperspace, Dane sat in his cockpit, helmet in his lap. Vera's voice came through. "You ready for this?" "Number, but I'm doing it anyway," she laughed softly. "You're insane." "Yeah," he said. "But so was Liam." The stars stretched into blue fire. The resistance was moving, and the Zalvari had no idea the storm that was coming. Riven's Hollow wasn't a planet. It was a wound. An old mining station orbiting a broken moon, wrapped in scaffolding and dark steel, its atmosphere polluted with metallic dust and radiation. Over the years, the Zalvari had transformed it into one of their most secret and heavily fortified construction sites, a place where titanic warships were born and rebellion died before it could breathe. Now, the final pieces of a new vessel, the Ember Warden, were being welded into place. Bigger than the unyielding flame, it was rumored to carry a new kind of fusion core, a singularity stabilizer capable of firing a planet-cracking beam. It wasn't a ship. It was extinction, shaped and armored, and Dane Thorne was about to kill it in its cradle. Dropping from hyperspace in 60 seconds, Vera Mayer's voice crackled through the comm. Dane sat strapped into the Revenant, systems humming, hull freshly patched but still scarred from the last battle. Across his canopy, the resistance fleet blinked into view. Over 100 vessels, mismatched and patched together from war wrecks, pirate hulls, and repurposed mining rigs. Every ship bore a story. Every crew had lost something. Dane keyed his transmission. All units, full stealth formation. Engines low burn only. The moment they see us, it's a slaughter. Colonel Briggs, piloting a repurposed Titan-class cargo cruiser, barked across the net. They'll see us the moment we're in range. Their scanners have 3 defensive rings. That's why we're not going through them, Dane said. Vera chimed in. You're seriously going under the belt? Dane smirked. We drop behind the moon's debris ring. Use the spin of the outer rock field to mask our approach. Come in beneath the yard's ventral structure. They built the Ember Warden assuming no one would ever dare fly under it. Briggs grunted. Then we better fly like ghosts. The fleet disappeared into the dead curve of the fractured moon. Riven's Hollow loomed ahead, an industrial monolith stretching miles across. Dozens of Zalvari warships hung around the station like teeth in a predator's jaw. But the bottom half, the underbelly, was still vulnerable, incomplete. They hadn't armored it yet. That was Dane's window. The Revenant hugged a chunk of ice stone as it drifted past a patrol drone, using the radiation interference to block scans. Just a few hundred meters more, and the shipyard's belly would be wide open. As he coasted, his sensors picked up a spike. Something new. Contact, Dane muttered. 3 fast movers, starboard. Vera's voice jumped in. We've been spotted. The stealth net shattered. Spotlights from the station flared. Sirens wailed. Dane kicked the Revenant's thrusters and blasted out of cover. All units, go loud. Hit the core spires. Cripple their power grid. The fleet followed, breaking formation and tearing into the chaos. Pulse beams, railgun rounds, and cannon fire ripped through space. Fighters weaved between scaffolding, targeting weapon platforms and shield emitters. Dane dove beneath the defensive array and launched a spread of mini-torpedoes into a cluster of shield generators. The explosion ripped through the superstructure, and fire bloomed across the steel lattice. The Ember Warden loomed above him, unfinished but deadly. Its main cannon was already powering up. We have to disable that core, he barked into the comms. Briggs growled, already on it. But the damn thing's got internal shields. We can't breach the lower reactor without getting inside the frame. Dane checked his map. Then I'm going in, Vira shouted. Dane, that thing's a death trap. I've walked into worse. He pulled the Revenant into a sharp spin and zeroed in on a half-finished docking arm that led directly into the lower hull of the Ember Warden. The hangar was still under construction, unguarded for now, probably considered too deep within the security net to matter. Big mistake. Dane dove into the shaft, scraping the paint as sparks flew off the hull. He landed hard and disembarked, rifle in hand. The hangar was deserted, a half-lit corridor stretching inward, echoing with the hiss of welding drones and unfinished ventilation. He tapped into his wrist pad, pinging Vera. I'm inside, routing a map back to you. Coordinate your fire on the central node. I'll reach the primary coolant chamber. She responded quickly. Copy that. We'll buy you time. Time wasn't what he needed. He needed luck. Inside the Ember Warden, Dane moved through steel skeleton corridors, ducking past flickering security bots and slipping through gaps in shielding. Every step deeper into the heart of the beast reminded him of Earth. The factories where they built defense drones, the labs where they once tried to match alien tech, the silence that followed the Zalvari invasion. This ship was their answer to defiance, their message to the galaxy. He would make sure it exploded before it ever spoke. Reaching the coolant chamber took 15 minutes of gut-tight crawling and avoiding sentry sweeps. When he reached the control panel, it was shielded, but the wall next to it wasn't. He placed a charge, stepped back. Boom! Smoke filled the hall. He slipped in through the gap, reached the coolant regulators, and pulled open the main panel. Inside, 6 power conduits glowed blue, feeding the stabilizer core. Without coolant, the fusion singularity would begin to overheat. At best, the ship would shut down. At worst, it would detonate from the inside out. Dane wasn't hoping for at best. He placed another charge, this one directly onto the core housing. As he prepped the detonation trigger, his wrist pad pinged. Vera again. Dane, we've got incoming. Heavy reinforcements warping in. Warships, not patrols. How long? 2 minutes, maybe less. We can't hold this position. Then don't. What? Fall back to the rendezvous point. You came here to delay them. I came here to end them. You're not gonna make it out. Dane didn't answer. Because he wasn't planning to. Not unless the galaxy let him. He activated the detonation timer. 40 seconds. His HUD lit up with a new red warning. Hostiles inbound. Zalvari infantry flooded into the coolant chamber. He fired, moved, ducked behind pillars. His rifle sang, bodies dropped, claws scraped the floor behind him. 30 seconds. He took a hit to the side, armor cracked. Pain surged. He rolled, dropped a mine behind him, and sprinted. 20 seconds. He made it to the hangar shaft again, but the way back to the Revenant was blocked. Collapsed steel. Rubble. 15 seconds. He looked up. A service hatch led to a narrow exhaust tunnel. 10 seconds. He pulled himself inside, crawling as heat flared around him. 5, 4, 3. He reached the exit port and dove. The Ember Warden exploded behind him, a starburst of fire, debris, and melting alloy. The Singularity Core collapsed into itself, tearing the hull apart. Dane's body was flung into space like a rag doll, caught in the explosion's edge. His suit alarms screamed. His oxygen dropped, hull integrity failing. Then everything went dark. He awoke to the sound of static. Then a voice. Vera's voice. Dane, if you can hear this. We saw it. The Ember Warden is gone. The fleet's scattering. You did it, you stubborn bastard. He blinked through cracked visor glass, stars spinning around him. A grappling line snapped out and latched onto his suit. A moment later, a ship appeared overhead. The Revenant. Autopilot. Emergency retrieval engaged. He passed out again as the ship reeled him in. Hours later, aboard a medbay in a resistance cruiser, Dane lay still. Bandaged, bruised, alive. Around him, cheers echoed across the decks. The warship was gone. The reinforcements had fled. The battle was theirs. Vera stood at his bedside, arms crossed, watching him breathe. Colonel Briggs grunted. The boy's a damn lunatic, Vera nodded. Yeah, but he just gave the galaxy something it hasn't had in a long time. Briggs raised an eyebrow. What's that? Hope. Dane Thorne awoke to a rhythm. Steady, mechanical, almost like a heartbeat. Beep, beep, beep. His eyes cracked open slowly, every muscle in his body aching like he'd been dragged across the surface of a dying star. Bright light flooded his vision, outlining the blurry shape of a medbay ceiling above him. He blinked once, twice. Sat up, then immediately groaned and slumped back, pain radiating down his side like fire. You shouldn't be moving, came a voice from the corner. Vera Mayer stepped out of the shadows, arms crossed, a new scar across her cheek. Her usually sharp expression was softer now, cautious, even a little relieved. You almost didn't make it, she added. Again. Dane grunted. Still breathing. Yeah, well, barely. He looked around. The medbay was clean but small, packed with half-functioning monitors and patched-up walls. The air had that recycled, metallic taste he'd grown too familiar with over the years. What ship? He croaked. Vera poured him a cup of water and handed it over. You're on the Aegis Bane. Resistance flagship now, I guess. The Revenant's being rebuilt, again. He sipped the water, then looked up at her. The Warden? Gone. Core imploded. Took half the shipyard with it. We got out with maybe 70% of the fleet intact. Not bad for a suicide run. Dane winced, shifting in his bed. Wasn't supposed to be suicide. You keep saying that, but your body keeps trying to prove you wrong. A moment passed between them. Then Vera added more quietly. They're calling you a warbringer now. Across the sectors, he raised an eyebrow. Warbringer? Some resistance cell on Delta 4 started it. Then it spread. Civilians on rogue freighters are using your name as a rallying cry. Even the old pirates in the Nibari Expanse are flying black flags with your silhouette. Dane closed his eyes. I'm not a hero. Doesn't matter what you think, she said. You're what they need you to be. 2 days later, he was walking again. Limping, but upright. Word of his survival spread fast. Everywhere he went aboard the Aegis Bane, resistance fighters nodded with reverence, some giving slight salutes, others staring as if they'd seen a legend walking the halls. Dane didn't like it. He wasn't doing this to be worshipped. He was doing this because no one else had stood up when Earth burned. At a command briefing, he stood at the head of a long war table surrounded by his makeshift council. Vera, Colonel Briggs, the Drenari monk Arvak, the cyber-eyed Luthari tactician Sava, and 2 new members, a human hacker named Ren, and a gruff ex-miner from the Shattered Colonies. Ren brought the bad news first. The Zalvari have begun activating planetary purges, 10 worlds so far, civilian-heavy colonies. They're targeting resistance sympathizers. Retaliation, Vera muttered. They've stopped trying to control the story, Briggs added. Now they're sending a message. You support the humans, you die. Sava tapped a claw against the digital map. We can't be everywhere. We don't have the ships. And if we scatter our forces to defend these targets, we lose offensive capability. Dane stared at the blinking red dots across the map. Every one of them was a planet on fire. We can't defend everyone, he said quietly, but we can make them pay for every life they take. How? Ren asked. They've pulled back their main fleets, consolidated around high-value systems. We can't penetrate their new security net. Then we don't, Dane replied. He leaned forward, tapping one of the less defended systems at the edge of the map. We hit the supply arteries, disrupt their economy, starve their fleets, cut off the fuel to the machine. He looked up. Forget fighting like soldiers. We fight like survivors, like humans. Over the next month, Dane became the architect of a new kind of war. Guerrilla raids replaced full assaults. Communication relays were jammed, hyperlanes mined, key Zalvari fuel depots destroyed by stealth teams. Vera led strike wings across remote sectors, torching shipyards before the enemy even knew they were there. Dane personally led 5 missions, including the hijack of a Zalvari freighter carrying rare fusion cores. Every one of those cores went to rebuild the Revenant. Each victory lit another fire in the galaxy. Across the systems, resistance spread like mold in steel cracks. Entire prison worlds rose up. Slave ships turned on their masters. Even former mercenaries defected, swearing allegiance to the man who brought down the Ember Warden. And with each victory, Dane could feel the war changing. For the first time in a century, the Zalvari were on the defensive. But they weren't finished. And in the darkness beyond known space, they were preparing something terrible. Deep within the Zalvari throne world of Veskar, in a chamber of obsidian and bloodsteel, the high castes gathered. The room was lit by the eerie glow of soul flames, energy from the harvested minds of fallen enemies, kept alive as trophies. At the center stood Archwarden Vijal, Tirlak's elder brother and now supreme executor of the Zalvari War Council. His 6 eyes burned as he stared at the glowing image of Dane Thorne projected in front of him. "A human," he growled. "One." "No," corrected the strategist beside him. He's more than that now. He's a symbol. They chant his name, worship him. They believe he can't die. Then we will prove them wrong, Vejal said. He turned to the chamber behind him. Activate Project Scourge. A pause. Then a massive steel door creaked open. Inside, suspended in a tank of dark fluid, floated a monstrous form, half organic, half machine. A prototype weapon, not a soldier, not a ship, a hybrid. Human DNA, stolen during the Mars genocide, fused with Zalvari tech. Vejal grinned. Let their savior face the face of his own extinction. Meanwhile, aboard the Revenant, now fully rebuilt and enhanced with stolen alien systems, Dane stood alone on the observation deck. The stars stretched before him, cold and beautiful. Vera approached quietly. We're getting more requests to join. Even ex-Federation captains are crawling out of retirement. You're building an army, Dane. He didn't respond. She stepped beside him, her voice softer. Do you ever stop? Even for a second? He stared at the stars. If I stop, I'll start thinking about everything I've lost. About Liam, about Earth, about the screams I couldn't answer. Vera placed a hand on his shoulder. You don't have to carry all of it alone. Yes, I do. She didn't argue, just stood with him, staring at the growing tide of stars. A war was coming, bigger than before, more brutal than anything they'd faced yet. And Dane Thorne, warbringer, survivor, symbol, was standing right where he belonged, at the edge of the fire, waiting to light the next spark. The galaxy held its breath. The resistance had grown beyond mere pockets of rebellion. What started as whispers in the shadows now echoed across entire systems. For every Zalvari ship destroyed, 5 more uprisings ignited. Supply lines were choked. Fear spread across the once invincible empire like rot under gold. And at the center of the storm stood Dane Thorne. Some called him a myth. Some said he couldn't die. Others whispered his name in prayer before battle. But the truth was simpler than all the stories. He was just a man who'd had enough. But even the strongest resolve couldn't prepare him for what came next. The Revenant drifted in low orbit above the fractured remains of CERN 9, a colony world the Zalvari had turned to ash only days before. What little atmosphere remained swirled with chemical fire and ruin. Below, millions of once-living voices had been silenced. Dane stood at the viewport, arms crossed, jaw tight. Vera entered, her expression grim. It's confirmed. The attack wasn't just retaliation, it was a test. Dane turned. Of what? She tapped the console beside him. A hollow projection came to life, a black silhouette hovering over a ruined battlefield. Humanoid in shape. Too large to be a soldier, too small to be a ship, and unmistakably wrong. Project Scourge, she said quietly. One of our contacts in Veskar smuggled out footage. The Zalvari have been working on this for years. A hybrid, made from human DNA and Zalvari tech. A living weapon. You weren't supposed to know it existed until it killed you. Dane stared at the image. It's not a clone. It's something worse. They used gene samples from Earth's fallen soldiers, maybe even from the colonists they massacred. Liam, Dane whispered, voice cracking before he could stop it. Vera put a hand on his arm. We don't know, but they built this for you. The Empire's last answer to what you've become. He stared at the image in silence, then spoke. Where is it? The coordinates took them to the edge of the Galactic Maw, a collapsed region of space where gravity twisted like ribbons and even time struggled to behave. Hidden deep within was an old Federation listening post, long abandoned and forgotten. Except it wasn't. As the Revenant neared the target system, sensors screamed warnings. It was already waiting. The Scourge didn't arrive in a fleet. It was the fleet. It moved through space like a god, clad in jagged black armor, its arms bristling with plasma veins and tech implants. No visible cockpit, no life signs. Yet it moved with intention, and it came straight for Dane. "Brace!" Vera yelled as the Revenant banked hard, narrowly avoiding a bolt of energy that punched through 2 asteroids like paper. "Weapons online!" Briggs roared over comms. "Firing all batteries!" Across the fleet, resistance ships opened fire. Torpedoes, lasers, kinetic rounds, all launched in perfect unison. They hit the Scourge dead center, and did nothing. The energy around it pulsed outward in a wave, shorting out 2 fighters, frying 1 cruiser's systems, and sending the rest scrambling. It wasn't just absorbing damage, it was learning from it. "It's adapting," Sava shouted. "It's reading our weapons and shifting defenses." Dane tightened his grip on the controls. "Get me closer." "You can't be serious," Vera barked. "I need to see it." The Revenant's cloaking systems flared as Dane shifted power to forward weapons. He locked onto the main power relay of a dreadnought above him. The Gaunt Vow. 1 precision shot with a pulse disruptor would cause a chain reaction across their networked shields. He fired. The disruptor beam tore through the weak point like wet paper. Inside the Gaunt Vow, lights flickered, then exploded. The shields dropped. Its reactor surged uncontrollably and vaporized half its hull in a flash of blue fire. Dane didn't wait to celebrate. He dropped countermeasures and slid between the wreckage before the return fire caught up. His heart pounded, but his mind was quiet, focused. Another ship down. He was dismantling an empire with 1 hand and a grudge. In the dark corners of the ship, deep within the Revenant, Dane's secondary systems were working on something else. Broadcasting. Not just to the Zalvari, to everyone. Hidden antennas pushed a message out across encrypted frequencies, signals the Zalvari wouldn't recognize, but that would catch the ears of old allies, neutral planets, and anyone who ever feared the black flags of the Zalvari fleet. It was a call, a reminder. Earth lives, and we remember everything. Back on the flagship, Tirlak's personal guard, hulking elite warriors, were now positioned across all entry points. Internal shields were boosted, command protocols changed. Yet still Tirlak couldn't shake the chill gnawing at his instincts. This wasn't just about 1 ship. It was about losing the myth of invincibility. If 1 human could do this, what if there were more? What if Earth wasn't dead? Tirlak stared at the blinking red icons, ships offline, others going dark. Panic wasn't something the Zalvari knew how to manage. And panic, he realized, was exactly what this Dane Thorn was spreading. He slammed his claw down and snarled, "Prepare the Oblivion Beacon. We wipe this system clean." The command was terrifying. The Oblivion Beacon was the last resort, an ancient Zalvari weapon built to collapse localized space-time. It destroyed everything, friend and foe. It meant they were afraid. They were willing to kill their own to stop 1 man. Dane, sitting inside his humming, scarred ship, watched the energy spike on his scanners. He grinned, lips curling cruelly. "Good," he whispered. "Now I've got your attention." He angled the Revenant upward, toward the heart of the unyielding flame. The final kill was always the loudest, and Dane Thorn wasn't leaving until he made sure the galaxy heard it. The Revenant spun through the carnage like a shark in bloodied water. Dane Thorn's fingers gripped the controls tightly, his eyes fixed on the spinning schematic of the unyielding flame. The Zalvari flagship. It was massive, layered in impenetrable shielding and guarded by a half-dozen cruisers in shifting formation. But Dane wasn't looking for a way in through brute force. He was looking for a weakness. Every empire had one. The Zalvaris was pride. They overbuilt everything, Their designs were grand, redundant, meant to show power instead of practicality. Dane had studied them for years, down to the last bolt. And he knew one thing for certain: the bigger something is, the harder it falls once you find the crack. He tapped into the encrypted frequency again, rerouting power to his decoy drones. Small, fast, barely detectable, each carried a fake thermal signature mimicking the Revenant. He launched 4 in opposite directions and dimmed his own energy output. "Let's see if they chase ghosts," he muttered. Sure enough, the Zalvari responded exactly as expected. The escort cruisers broke formation. 2 turned to intercept Drone A. Another broke right for Drone B. Missiles fired. Lasers lit up the void. Dane watched their movement patterns from his silent position behind a shattered Zalvari battleship. Predictable bastards! Now the heart of the fleet had a hole, a small one, just wide enough. He boosted the Revenant's thrusters and cut a hard vector toward the breach. The ship roared forward like a silent scream. Inside, Dane rerouted all shield power to the forward section. He didn't need to survive long. He just needed to reach the inner hull. A red warning light flared. Plasma cannon charge detected from the flagship. He was locked on. "Almost," he whispered. "Come on, you ugly son of a—" The Revenant dove downward, spinning as the plasma cannon discharged. A beam of blistering white heat sliced past him, missing by meters. It shredded the side of an old dreadnought behind him, which exploded violently in his wake. The shockwave rocked the Revenant, throwing sparks across his dashboard. But Dane held steady. He shot forward and slid underneath the flagship's dorsal belly, where its armor was thick, but not invulnerable. He only needed to reach one vent. The targeting reticle flashed green. "There you are,"